Welcome to Her Love of Sports with your host, Katie Hamilton.
Hey everyone, welcome to Her Love of Sports, where we are highlighting, promoting professional women in sports. Today, Olympic gold medalist, world champion, hockey legend Cassie Campbell Pascall will be joining us. Today, to kick it off, let me introduce you to my co-host. 15 years old, she's one of two girls that play for her JV high school hockey team, point scorer for the Missoula Wild lacrosse team, and currently races in the Interscholastic Mountain Bike League. She has also started her own project supporting girls called Lily's Lovebirds. My cousin, Lily Miller. Lily, thank you for joining us today on Her Love of Sports.
You're welcome.
How's it going today?
Really good.
Good. Awesome. So you are super into sports. You've played everything. You've played lacrosse, soccer, hockey. I know with your family you go skiing, white river rafting, kayaking, everything. But how did you first get into sports?
My mom and dad were both are athletic, and they've always loved being outside. And so I just kind of adopted that and started sports at a very young age. And now I love them and I continue doing them.
What do you find that you love most about sports? Like, has it given you leadership skills, friendships?
It's given me both those. I develop a lot of friendships through sports, but it's also like they have that moment where you're just so happy and you're smiling and nothing could be better. And I find that a lot in sports.
So what would you say is your favorite sport that you play?
That's really hard. Hockey is probably my most competitive and the thing I want to try the hardest at and want to win. But skiing is like my meditation where I just feel free and I just let the weight of the world off me.
Totally. I love it. So I've watched you play hockey before. I came down and watched one of your tournaments in Missoula, and you were playing on a boys team, and there were a few girls, but you wouldn't notice unless you know who the girls are. So what's it like playing in a co-ed or on a boys team and being one of the only females?
Well, I've always played on co-ed teams. And as more and more girls went over to join the girls and they divided up into girls and boys, I stayed on the boys side because it's a little bit better competition. It's there's definitely differences to it. There is some expectations. They're like, oh, it's a girl, and they go against a girl. But at the same time, it's just a bunch of kids having fun playing hockey. And we're still a family no matter what.
Totally. I love it. So have you had any challenges with being, I know that you said that there's not too much of a difference. Everyone's very welcoming, but have you had any challenges in your journey through sports, being the only girl?
There's a problem with locker rooms. We have to change in different locker rooms than the boys. And sometimes we'll be stuck in a bathroom, especially in places where girls don't play with the boys. So there isn't a girls, or don't even play hockey. So there isn't a girls' locker room. And yeah, so me and my friend have been stuck in bathrooms before, or often a storage closet. And that's kind of hard. Also, there are comments from other teams sometimes, but mostly that is I kind of let it roll off my shoulders. Don't really think much about it. My team has been great. I haven't had any problems with that. I think it's really good to play boys hockey because it shows the boys that we can work together and shows them that I'm a great hockey player as well and don't need to be separated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would you say your goals and dreams are for sports? Is there somewhere you want to go with this?
I want to play hockey in college. That sounds like a really fun experience. When I'm older, it would be fun to coach a, a hockey team or a lacrosse team. But I just want to continue playing sports, whether it's competitively or just like using it to get out in the outdoors or just have some fun. I just want to continue playing it and doing it.
Totally. Okay, so now you have Lily's Lovebirds, and I actually have one here in studio with me. Can you tell me about Lily's Lovebirds, where you came up with the idea, and what it really is all about?
Lily's Lovebirds is an organization I started, I think, in the second, third grade. And I was reading I Am Malala. My mom made me read it first, and then I started getting into it, and I was like, wow, girls can't go to school in other places. And it was the first time this really occurred to me. And I love school. I hate it because I'm a teenager. Like, I don't want to go there, but I also love it because you learn all these things, and I really appreciate it. And so, not having girls like have the opportunity to get education was astonishing to me, and I wanted to help that. And so at the time, I was sewing these lovebirds for a craft fair, and I continued sewing them, and I started selling them to raise money to help girls go to school in mostly Nepal, and some scholarships, and also some goes to the Malala Foundation.
That's amazing. Wow. And how old were you again when you started this?
I think third grade was when I really started it.
Third grade. Wow. So you were so young, and to have that vision and to want to give back and help girls out at such a young age, I mean, that's amazing. So you also have for sports, raising money. I believe it's called I Play.
Yes. So my 8th grade year, we had to do a project, and this one's a little smaller than Lily's Lovebirds, but I created these bracelets, and I gave them to girls who play sports and girls who want to play sports, especially younger girls. And I actually had a hockey clinic and taught these little kids who didn't really know how to skate. And it was really fun. We just had fun, especially at that age. I think it's really important to just like smile and realize it's, I don't know, just having fun and playing a little boot hockey and skating and all that.
Of course. I mean, you're such a great role model for young athletes everywhere. And to do that at such a young age, you're so inspiring. What advice would you give to young girls in a similar situation to you are, where they might be one of only a few girls on a sports team who may be a little bit uncomfortable or unsure? What advice would you give to them to be positive and keep going?
Well, I've actually gotten this a lot from girls like a few years younger than me in hockey, because since me and my friend Sunny now play boys high school hockey, it's kind of opened up this new window. And I usually say I love boys hockey and I love being able to check, and it's been really great for me. But if you don't feel comfortable doing this, do something you feel comfortable where you can still play the sport. Also, when you have a friend like Sunny who will sit in the locker room with me, so it's not just being by myself, that's really helpful if there's someone who you can go through it with. And I would say don't give up. If Don't let these small challenges like deter you from playing that sport. There are always ways you can get around it.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much. So now, two-time Olympic gold medalist, six-time world champion, and the first woman to provide color commentary on Hockey Night in Canada, Cassie Campbell Pascall. Cassie, welcome so much to Her Love of Sports.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Lily.
Thanks for joining us. So we're just going to get into it. So we want to hear about your journey through sports, how you got to where you are today, starting from the beginning.
Well, I think just the love of the game of hockey, to be honest with you, is how it all started. I'm old enough that when I was a young girl, young girls weren't really allowed to play hockey. There wasn't, opportunities or teams for them to play on. And so I started playing boys hockey and just loved it. My older brother played and I kind of wanted to be just like him. And so just, kind of kept playing and playing and playing. And even at, sort of age 16, 17, when a lot of my friends were quitting to do other things and play other sports, I just continued to play. And, lucked out where I could play in the first ever Canada Winter Games for women's hockey in 1991. And, that kind of just helped keep me on the right track. And then, eventually making the national team in 1994 and going to the University of Guelph and playing, and then the ability to go on to 3 Olympic Games. So I honestly think it started just because I love the game. I wanted to play, and I felt like it was a healthy choice and a great dream to have, even though I didn't know where I could go with it. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Amazing. So you were saying that you played on a boys hockey team as well, as much like Lily. What kind of struggles or challenges were there playing, especially back then, as one of the only females in a male-dominated sport?
Well, I think for me, my very first year, I'd show up half dressed and, had a little short haircut. And I don't actually think the boys knew I was a girl until the end of the year. We had a swimming party, to celebrate the season. And then they're like, wait a minute, that bathing suit looks a little different. But my parents tell me now that, there was things being said with a girl playing on a boys team, but I don't remember. I think I just remember skating and playing and having fun. And, but I think generally, you'd walk into a rink as a young girl with your hockey bag over your shoulder back then and your sticks in your hand, and you'd kind of hear some rumblings and people snicker and, girls shouldn't play. And unfortunately, those kind of things still exist to this day, but we're getting there. And, but I just remember the struggle of trying to find places to play, as I was playing in minor hockey, just, trying to find those best opportunities to make yourself better every single day. And, I was fortunate enough that I grew up playing eventually, after moving from the States where I started playing boys hockey, moving back to Canada and, joining one of the largest girls hockey associations in the world in the Brampton Canadettes. And so I was pretty fortunate to be able to play, female hockey for a long part of my career. And that's kind of how it went, but you heard the adversity, but you just love the game so much that you kind of just, you just push through it. That's kind of how it was.
Totally. I love it. So you joined Team Canada in 1994 after 2 unsuccessful attempts at being selected at 1990 and 1992, correct?
I did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that's amazing to come back. So just if you could touch on that, and also what advice you would give to athletes who aren't selected for their team, either the first round or the second round, and to keep going if that's what their dreams are, and to push through that.
Yeah, I was a 16-year-old when I tried out for 1990, and to be honest with you, thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Right? I just captained, Team Ontario, and I was like, where did all these great players come from? I had no idea, and so I didn't even make it out of the list of Ontario. And then the same thing happened in 1992 as an 18-year-old, and then eventually made my first World Championship when I was 20 in 1994, and just obviously kind of never looked back and just continued to play after that. And, I think that taught me a lot, that adversity, I think early in my career taught me how to be a better teammate down the road, taught me how to be a more versatile player, taught me how to deal with adversity. And I think the advice that I would give is that, we're all going to fall down in life. We're all going to have really tough times in our life. And so you can either allow them to take over and that becomes your life, or you could, learn from them. You can get motivated by them. You can learn lessons from those challenges that help, change your point of view, change the way you train in the case of sport, or, change the way something small that helps you just to get better as a person. So, I tend to get motivated by challenges, and I tend to learn and get a good perspective from challenges. So, that's my advice to all the young kids out there. You're not going to make every team. Sometimes you're going to fall down on the ice. You got to get back up. And, but really, there's a great opportunity to learn from adversity. It can teach you about perspective, and it can teach you about motivation, and it can teach you a lot about yourself. And I think that's an athlete mindset is we almost want adversity. We almost want to face it because we know it's something that's going to make us better in the long run. And, that's something that I approached it that way as an athlete. And I continue to approach that way throughout the rest of my life now.
Wow. That's great advice. Lily, do you have a question for Cassie?
This is kind of a simple question, but I was wondering, where do you like to skate the most? I feel like I have favorite places to skate. I was wondering if you had like a favorite spot.
When I was growing up, we always played Sunday mornings. That was the girls' hockey time, 7:15 a.m. And it was a place called Rosalie Arena in Brampton, Ontario, where I grew up. And I think it's been torn down now, but it was freezing cold. And of course, Sunday mornings, pitch black by the time, you're getting into the car with your parents. But it had the best ice. It was like the hardest ice. And I just remember having so many great minor hockey moments at that time. And then there was another place that the boys used to always get to play at, and it was called Memorial Arena in Brampton, Ontario. And I never got to actually play in that arena until I was an elite athlete. So, it's just kind of, that's where the boys played and the girls played at this other rink. And that was the way it was. But, I think I've gotten to play at the Scotiabank Arena, which was then called the Air Canada Centre in Toronto. And I've gotten to play, at the Pepsi Center in Colorado, which was then the Pepsi Center. I'm trying to think if it still is now. But any of the NHL arenas, I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to play on, where the Edmonton Oilers play. And I played on the Saddle Dome, Scotiabank Saddle Dome. So those are pretty special places for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so Cassie, going to your broadcast career. So I have followed your career all the time. You're one of the people that I look up to the most. So in October 2006 was the second game of your broadcasting career. CBC color commentary Harry Neale was going to miss his first game in decades. That night, you became the first woman to do color commentary on Hockey Night in Canada. Walk us through what you were feeling in that moment when you received the call.
Well, I found out that morning when I went to the rink. I had flown to Toronto from my home in Calgary and was anticipating be a sideline reporter, which I was hired for, and had one game under my belt the previous weekend. And I found out that morning as we were at the morning skates that, unfortunately, Harry Neale had to go home in the middle of the night and be with his family due to an emergency situation that was going on around their home. And, he'd never missed a game in 30 years. And so I thought for sure they were joking, this is my rookie moment. And, I remember that day like it was yesterday. And my producer, Shirley Najak, and another producer, Brian Spear, brought me over to one side of the rink and told me the news. And I kind of looked at them and said, okay, what are you going to do? And they said, well, we want you to do it, and this is in October of 2006. And I, kind of quickly just sort of was thinking, okay, am I going to do this? And I said, can you just give me 2 minutes? And I quickly called my husband and he was like, yeah, you got to do this. This is just an opportunity of a lifetime. You may never get this opportunity. So, for me, I was just hoping, one person in this world was going to love me after I embarrassed myself in front of 5 million people that night. But, I jumped at the opportunity as quickly as I could. And it was different for people to hear a woman's voice after hearing Bob Cole and Harry Neale for so long. And, but it was just an experience of a lifetime. And I know it opened up doors for me to do color that same season. And I went on to do more color with CBC and of course with Sportsnet. And now I'm doing color all the time. I'm not a sideline reporter. I've been doing color full time now for 4 or 5 years. And I do some panel analyst work now. And I just feel if I probably would have said no to that opportunity way back in October, I probably wouldn't have had all these other opportunities. So it was a great yes on my part. And it was a lot of fun to be up there with Bob Cole.
That's amazing. And then that you also provided commentary at 3 Olympic Winter Games, the first being 2010 Winter Games in Vancouver, which Lily actually attended, where
Nice.
You were challenged to stay unbiased and watch your former teammates win gold. But you were also the first woman to call a men's Olympic final on radio as Canada beat Sweden in the 2014 Games. So how did that make you feel?
Well, I remember going to 2010 was the first Olympics that I wasn't going to be an athlete competing, after I retired. And I had never really thought about that process of what it would be like going back to that Olympics, not as an athlete. And I remember the day before I left, packing my bags and jumping on a plane to Vancouver. And I did. I had this moment where I was like, boy, are you ready for this, Cass? This is going to be big. You're not an athlete anymore. And are you okay? And I was just kind of have this self check-in moment, and it was emotional. Like I obviously I'm working with a Canadian broadcaster, and I used to play for the team, and I'm Canadian, and we're sending it out to all the Canadians, across the country. And I remember just the excitement of watching them win and knowing the adversity that they face behind the scenes and the pressure of winning. in Canada, and to be able to be there to tell their story as truthfully as I could. And then to be able to meet up with them after and celebrate was pretty special too. And, a lot of those girls were still, they're still my teammates, obviously, and they're my friends. And I wish them nothing but the greatest of success, and to pull it off like they did in 2010 was pretty incredible. And to be there and to be able to tell their story, after an emotional start, it was an emotional ending for so many different reasons. And it was nice that was my first Olympics that I got to broadcast. So that was pretty special to me.
I was wondering what your most embarrassing moment was and how'd you recover from that?
Yeah. One of my most embarrassing moments, and I apologize, but I swore on national television, so I'm going to have to actually say the word, but I meant, my producer was putting a pack together of a defenseman who played for the Edmonton Oilers at the time, Matt Benning. And he said, Matt Benning shifts, is what he said to me as the pack started to come. So we see this pack for the very first time as I'm talking about it on the air. That's kind of how it works. It's coming, and you've asked for it. You've said, mark this Matt Benning play, mark this play. You're marking things as you go, but you're seeing this pack come to you at the very first time. And I went to say Matt Benning takes a hit, but of course I had just heard my producer say Matt Benning shifts. So I said Matt Benning takes a, what? And as I'm going through the pack, and so my play-by-play guy, who was Dave Randolph at the time, he's losing it. Like he's got his talkback button so no one can hear him laughing, and he's losing it. And I can hear the people in the truck losing it as well. And I got to keep going, right? I just got to go with the flow. And so that was probably one of my most embarrassing moments, but at the same time, it was funny. It was an inappropriate word, of course. You never want to swear on television, but you could see where hit and shifts and, how it all got sort of put together. And I'll never forget that moment, because we, like, Dave Randorf, as soon as I finished the pack, of course, he's got to be professional too. And he goes from complete laughter to complete professionalism. Okay. And, carries on with the play. And I had my talkback button on after I finished and was laughing, and it was just one of those embarrassing things where life happens. It's live television. And, it's better than saying puck, the word that rhymes with that.
Yeah.
So I think I got away with one, but it happens sometimes.
Great. Do you have any other questions for Cassie, Lily?
Who was your hero, and what is it like being a hero for younger generations now?
Well, I think my parents were definitely my heroes. My older brother, Jeff, both my parents were very hardworking people and had their own businesses, and, just really taught me a lot. And so they're my heroes for sure. But I didn't get a chance to meet a lot of my female hockey heroes until I was about 17 years old, right after the 1990 World Championship, and 16, 17. And, I got a chance to meet Angela James and Sue Shear, and Sue Shear ended up being my coach, and she was the captain of the first ever World Championship team for Canada. So, that generation were my heroes. And, I loved Paul Coffey in the NHL. And, that was someone I tried to emulate my game after. And the reason I wore 77 and 7 like he did. And, but my family, I think, is first and foremost. And then I struggle, Lily, with sort of, people say, oh, I look up to you and I watched you play, and I get a chance to meet them, but I struggle with that. I understand my role as an ambassador of the game. I understand the importance of that. But I really struggle as an athlete being someone's hero, because, for me, I think it should be, medical professionals and firefighters and police officers and people who are saving people's lives every single day. And the list goes on and on. So I kind of struggle with it worded that way, right? I kind of look at it as trying to be a good role model, trying to just be a good person. And I think trying to be, just a good ambassador for the game.
Yeah.
So Cassie, where do you see women's hockey going in the future?
Well, who knows? No, we've had a tough time here this last couple of years, and I feel real bad for the current athletes that are playing it. They've had their league fold and a variety of different sort of issues that have popped up, and, world championships canceled and those types of things. So it's been a tough haul here, but, I do believe eventually we'll have our first ever true professional women's hockey league. And I do believe that it will fall under the NHL umbrella. And I personally believe, whether I'm right or wrong, that that's the best way for us to survive and the best way for us to move forward. So that's my hope. That's what I push for behind the scenes. But I give a lot of credit to these current players who've come together under the PWHPA and the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association and really put their careers on hold to fight what they believe is right for the future of the game. And it's been incredible to get to know them, over this last, sort of few years and see what type of leaders and what type of people they are. And so I hope we're going to have a professional league, a true professional league where we have, professional buildings we play in, great coaching, good practice facilities, all those things that we see in the men's side. I hope eventually we have on the women's side. And I know those salaries are probably going to be way different, and that's okay. But I think to have that same infrastructure where, you're treated professionally, you get a small, a salary to be able to play the game for sure. But, that's what I see down the road.
And as you know, the dropout rate for girls in sports just keeps growing higher and higher. What can we as coaches, as supporters, family, friends do to support our women in sports and women in hockey?
Well, I think start treating them the same way that you would treat young men. I think show that you care, show that there's a professionalism to it, show that there are places where they can go and play and go get an education and in a variety of different sports. But I think the big thing is to show that you care. We kind of tend to do more for our sons in sport, and we kind of tend to do more for boys, when we're volunteering in sport or for minor hockey associations. And I think it's time that we start treating young girls in sport the exact same way, in the sense that when we have an agenda at a board meeting for a minor hockey team, a minor hockey league, a minor hockey community, organization, the agenda needs to make sure that it's not just a boys' agenda, that the girls are part of that agenda just as much. And what are we doing for the girls? And if we're doing this for the boys, then we should be doing this for the girls. And we as a society need to start thinking that way a lot more often. And I know a lot of it is about, well, my son will grow up and he'll play in the NHL and he'll make a lot of money. It's sort of this transactional type of thing. But we will never have that transactional type of thing in a professional sports setting for women if we don't believe that it can happen. And so, that when you're making decisions about minor sports and when you're making decisions about as elite sports go, when you have agendas, they better include both men and women equally. And that's just the bottom line. And but I think caring about female athletes, understanding what they're going through at those age groups, developmentally, hormonally, all those types of things. But put the same effort into girls minor hockey as you would for boys minor hockey. And I think that'll solve a lot of our problems.
I completely agree with you. Lily, I'm going to pass the reins over to you to go ahead and ask Cassie whichever questions you want, as many you'd like.
Playing both in boys and girls sports associations, I've realized the biggest disparity, in my opinion, is the expectations for girls from the coaches and parents and spectators is more to be kind and to have a sport more as a social opportunity and less of an actual competition. And I fully agree that it's social and it's awesome and I want everyone to be kind, but I have had experiences like my sister, we mountain bike race and a girl crashed and my sister was like, okay, she bike passed her and she was like, are you okay? And her girl was like, I'm fine, go ahead. And my sister continued and won the race. And she got a lot of heat for not helping the girl. And whereas in boys that's happened and it hasn't gotten as much heat. And I was wondering what your opinion was on that, or how we expect our girls to play a sport.
Yeah. Isn't it? It's funny. I don't want to speak to that specific situation because I wasn't there and I didn't see it. And, did she ride right over? I don't know how it all works, but that's the thing. Girls can be competitive. and that's okay. And you should encourage it. You know, you, as a coach, sports are competitive by nature. Now, winning at all costs is not something we want to see at minor hockey, you know, in minor sports. It should be about building character, and it should be about building good human beings. But man, girls can be competitive, and to embrace that as a coach, embrace that as an administrator, embrace that as a parent. It's okay, you know, that you can still do all these amazing things off the ice and off the field and still be competitive on it. And that's something to me that when you have a competitive woman, you have a strong woman. You have someone who knows where she wants to go, someone who's goal orientated. And so those are the types of characteristics that I think sometimes we think, you know, women, we shouldn't give to our young girls because this is the way they're supposed to be. Well, we don't, you know, try to mold men into what we think they should be, but we tend to do it more towards women. And so, you know, I think you're bang on it. Be competitive. It's okay. Don't ride over the girl as she's, you know, struggling there.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's important for all of us to understand. But I do think it's okay to be competitive. It's okay to want to win the race. It's okay to want to be the fastest. It's okay to want to be the strongest. And I think it's okay to do it, whether you're a young boy or a young girl. And I think that's some of the stereotypes that I think as a society, we need to continue to keep looking past and figuring out a way that we can make those stereotypes kind of go away.
Mm-hmm. I also had a question. So the smell of stick wax always reminds me of hockey. And I was wondering if there was like something that just like made you just think of hockey and made you smile every time you like.
Yeah. You know, it's the smell of ice, you know, it's like, whether it's coming out of your freezer, you know, the fresh ice smell, you just, you know, you just got a batch of fresh ice coming out of your freezer. Just, you know, one of the best things for me is when I get to go to NHL arenas, you know, I usually show up about 2 hours prior to the game, 2.5 hours, and you get a chance to go down by the ice, stand on the bench, and you can just breathe in. There's nobody there, and you can just smell the ice, you know, the freshness of the ice. And I think that's something that just the smell of ice, which is a weird thing because it kind of doesn't really have a smell, but there's like a freshness to it that reminds me of hockey. And and I think it brings you back to those minor hockey arenas, right? Where you're usually there kind of not by yourself because there's other teams going on and off before and after you, but you do get that chance to go on the ice first, which is what I always tried to do in practice. And you just get that smell of, okay, here we are, we're getting ready to go. Now there are some smells in hockey that aren't as nice, but they still bring you back. But I'd like to say the smell of ice is one that brings me back to want to play.
Lily has said that one of her dreams would be to play university or college hockey. So what kind of advice would you give to Lily and to girls in the same situation who want to go and play university hockey?
Well, I think first and foremost is, you know, research your schools that you're going to go to, and, you know, think about your education while you're picking the school. I know it's fun to play sports and all those types of things, but unfortunately, the way it exists right now, we can't play professional hockey. So we do have to have an avenue post sport where we can make a living. And so, you know, try to pick the school that best suits education and athletics. And I think in that order. And, you know, you're really lucky if you get recruited to a school where it has the best of both worlds. And I think you're getting to an age, Lily, where it's going to start to get overwhelming probably in another year or two, where it's like, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do? And just know that those big questions are going to figure themselves out. So pick a really good school as far as education, and then a really good school as far as your athletics. And I think that's the best way to go about it. And you'll find the things that you're interested in if you can't really see that at this point, as you go along and as you go through courses and as you know, get an opportunity to meet new people at university. But university hockey was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I loved playing for the University of Guelph and, you know, loved winning a championship there. Still keep in touch with so many of my teammates from, you know, those days. And so know that you're embarking on just an amazing journey. Like that university journey is amazing because I really, truly think you learn a lot about yourself and who you are. But as you're picking university, you know, make sure that you're looking at education. I think that has to be the number one priority. And then your athletics are a close second, but in that order.
Yeah. We're starting to get a lot of letters from universities
Nice.
stuff like
That's
that.
awesome. What now, do you have one that you want to go to, or you probably don't want to answer that question? I'm asking you the questions now.
I do not have one I want to go to. I have ideas. Living in a small town, I kind of want to go to a big city because I've been to big cities before, but I'm kind of like a small town like mouse or whatever, and I'm always like, oh my god, what's going on? And so that'd be really fun. Yeah, I think the academics is really important. I have a 4.0, so I love
good.
yeah.
Yeah, good for you. That's awesome.
Well, Cassie, Lily, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Her Love of Sports. Cassie, it was wonderful to hear from you, hear your expertise. You are such a role model for girls, for athletes everywhere. And Lily, you are as well with everything that you are doing. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Lily.
So that's it for this episode of Her Love of Sports. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our special guests, Cassie Campbell Pascall, Lily Miller. To catch all the latest, make sure you follow us on social media at Her Love of Sports and check out herloveofsports.com. Special thanks to our mentor, Dave Shumka, StoryHive project manager, Sean Cathcart, and the National Screen Institute.